Since Olaf's invitation to watch the falling stars and the tears of St. Laurentius really started and triggered everything, so that's where it all began, as I said. I thought it's fair enough to ask you to make the first comment of the day.
Yeah, when I was getting the invitation to come again and again to Lockwood, I asked myself why I accept this invitation so joyful. So, and to be very honest, and it leads a little bit to the question, what is information? It was a very instinctive decision because I love to be here. So, what does it mean I love to be here? It means that there are certain moments, settings where I'm very happily involved. It doesn't mean there's no conflict, but it means it's something which I'm on a level which I cannot really rationally explaining, enjoying it. And that has to do with information in this way that I can't recall the quote very clearly, but Lacan once was saying, who's believing that speaking is about exchanging information is a fool. What you do when you speak, you exchange desires. Information is a side product. Animals do that as well. So what we talk about, all the things that is he believing, and I share this belief, that we only get into things when we are involved. And that this involvement is nothing what we have to be aware of. We are anyhow involved. And the falling stars, that were some examples like that. Because when we did that, the falling stars were a joyful thing, and we were there, and you know, these wishes. But by the way, not each falling star in each culture represents a wish. In the Egypt culture, it was just a sign of death. Because they thought that each individual being is represented as a star. And when there is a star falling, then somebody is dying. And the Greek came up with this idea that you can have wishes because they thought the falling stars are the trash of the gods. When they clean their house, they open the door and throw the trash out. So when the door is open, you can send out the wish. So that was the idea of that. But to bring it back to the framework is that when you think about the falling stars, and as we presented it as an event what you can see regular every year, if the conditions are okay, if you calculate correct. To have an understanding that something what is going on out there and that it is coming back and that you can see it next year. This understanding was not before the 1800s. There was no theory of physics, no theory of astronomy what could explain you what is going on out there. So it means when you are enjoying them and you expect it next year, you are already in a framework of information and knowledge.
You don't just explain the work in 2 sentences? I mean,
the work is, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know exactly what the work is. I have described you the setting. There's a poster, and on the poster there's there's just a phrase telling you what to do, where to watch, at what time, and when there is a good circumstance, okay, you see a falling star. Just then, in the period of the beginning of August, around this and this time, a certain angle of the northern hemisphere, and in Rioche, you will see a falling star. So it's called the Tears of St. Lawrence. La notte di San Lorenzo in Italian, so in German it's Laurentius thing. So you see it very good here. So the thing is, that is a common thing which a lot of people share, especially in the Mediterranean. So, and this was one thing. So it was an announcement. It was an advertisement. Advertisement, like I advertise you do this and you get a free cell phone or whatever. And this advertisement was specially made on a special occasion, because we were talking about my contribution to the Venice Biennial. And I had this idea to come up with this project, but it was also a project inside this art world circus where, especially at the opening week in Venice, the whole thing is about buying and selling attention. It's a social gathering together and you need to get attention. And I was involved in this thing several times before, and it is very hard sometimes for an artist to work in Venice. So what I thought is, I want really to use the structure of the attention to work with that. So that's why I asked the biennial to advertise something, which is going on anyhow. So the interesting thing was there were 2 Americans, one and they asked me, how did you make the NASA doing this for you? But the interesting thing is that this question is a super smart question because they're very clear. If you bring something to their attention, it is something what is made. It is not given. The made sphere is the sphere of commodities. It's the sphere of exchange. It's the sphere of what I can buy, what I can sell. And that is what it is about. Attention is a commodity. Attention is something what you can buy and you can sell. And a big industry is built on that, starting from the 70s. Because there was a lack of resources where you can build up industries. And the Americans started it. So that is also about this. So you see, watching a falling star can track you to very different spheres. And that was the starting point of the work. But we also published a little booklet because I like books so much. And this booklet was given out for free. And beside there was a calendar where you can calculate the event in the next years. I mean, with universal time you can calculate to the eternal future. And also all the spots around the northern hemisphere you can see it. So it's really like a guidebook. If you have it, you can find your way. You don't need anything else. And then there was a glossary, which gives you a lot of things about comets, falling stars, all these things what's going on down out there at heaven. So, and this is a little bit also when you think about that the star constellations are the first images which human beings have seen. Long before anything else, they see these stars and they don't know what it is. What is it, what you see out there? You know, I mean, we have now very sophisticated settings. We believe, we do, but if you see that, I mean, you down here and up there, I mean, what do you think, what is this when you don't have any concept of that? So you make theories, you make interpretations.
Then you watch the Venus transit.
Then you watch the Venus transit, and but if you know it is the Venus, that's the other thing. It could be also a god who's sliding down. Yeah, I mean, it is just a question of concept. And so the whole thing is, when you go into this world, you know, when you have these kind of frameworks, then you are already in all these kind of settings, which you think they are separate from you. They are somewhere already out. I know they are in you. They are in there. And for example, all the interpretations, what are constellations up there, they are not so far from all these nice methodologies. What is an image? What is an artwork? What is this about? Because it is something, and that's what I like of artworks, that they are like constellations which you never know. You cannot go behind. It's not a screen. You know, there's nothing behind. It's just there. And then that is what I emphasize with artworks. Artworks are things which are not really objects. They are just there. They are more than objects. And knowledge has to do with reflection. If you think about it. Artworks are more, when they are really working as I hope they are, part of deflection. They are not reflecting, they reflect. You know, they are already through bodies. So the reflection is something else. You can use them to reflect, but they are more than this. They have an ability. That's why it is going through the centuries on. You know, that's why we still can see a painting which was made 500 years ago and be touched. It is not contemporary, not at all. But you are touched. How can it be? And then you start to interpret it, it runs in circles. I mean, the most famous example for me is Hieronymus Bosch. I mean, there are so many studies about what was this about. And when I grew up, there was a big volume published, and it was like the key. I mean, now we know it. And it is about, he was part of a sect, a Christian, all these kind of things. And everything made sense. I mean, in the last 10 years, they found out everything is nonsense. There was nothing like this. He was never part of this sect. So, you see, I mean, this is what you're diving in. That's why information is just a helpful metaphor. So,
but you mentioned that you also wanted to bring up this issue of the ideorhythmic,
yes,
which is something we've been talking about in the past, and I think it's again very valid here in Lockwood. Maybe you want to pick up on that just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to also the setting here. We have an island and we have a monastery, and this is not an accident. So, and I was very much recalling the reading of Roland Barthes' seminar, How We Can Live Together, where he is developing several approaches, failures, going back and forth, how you can invent or hallucinate a community which is not consuming the individual in total, gives space to it. So one of the concepts what he found in the monasteries is the idiorhythmie, which is the opposite to the normal order like ora et labora, where you have all the kind of strict regularities. It's more an association and where you have to get adopted. And I found the rhythm thing very interesting, because rhythm is what you said about body, It's the first way to symbolize things. And you have babies, children, rhythm. It's about rhythm, Breathing is about rhythm. So how can you synchronize rhythms and how can you deconnect rhythms again? So, and from a point of view as an artist who's mostly working at first with himself, so I have to find out what is this community I work with. So I'm very aware that this is a very concrete perspective and a very concrete moment made for me. So my problems are actually the problems of other people, and I have not to share them and they have not to share them with me. I'm sure there are some, but if I would say it more abstract, I think it is the problem of a bourgeois individual, which is in the last 200-300 years created as a hallucination of a citoyen or whatever. But when you are an individual, how do you create identity without being alienated? On the one side, how can you associate and associate in a way which is not just that you keep away and keep yourself in this storage all the time. So that's why this came up with. And in Paul Bart's book, there's a concept which is very interesting. He is taken from language, which is called the shifter. And the shifter is a concept by Roman Jakobson when he was studying the function of several elements of language. And the shifter in the language is an element which has no meaning. But a language is not working without this shifter. For example, a word like here, or a word like now. It has no meaning if you not contextualize it in the sentence. If I just say here, you would ask me, where? If I say now, it could be that I talk about something in the past and I recall an event. So you need a context of it. And the biggest shifter is the word I. Because what does it refer to? You need a context to understand. And one shifter as well is the name, the single name. Olaf, Daniela, Francesca. But there are family names to identify you. This is already a way to de-shift the concept, because then you are more identified. And Roland Barthes said once, when he is named Bart, Roland, for him this is an act of aggression. So you see, and my idea was also to raise the question, can an institution be a shifter? Can an institution work with this concept of a shifter? For the individual, if you play cards, the joker is a shifter, for example, the joker card. So, but
so that's the next image for next year.
The joker, yeah. And if you recall the last Batman, not the new one, you know that the joker is a very dangerous person. And that's exactly what it is about. When you say the joker, and you don't mean it only in metaphors, it is not a funny concept. It is a concept where you really have to know exactly which game you want to play and where you want to be in, where you want to contextualize yourself, or which context you want to be for somebody. So it is about making choices as well. And I think this is also something. And making choices is something what has to do with being partly non-metaphorical. That is something what is very important, to be non-metaphorical in a certain moment. Because when you are dealing with language, you need metaphors, because life is more complicated than the language can represent it. But if you want to live, you must identify for a moment. So what I say is bringing contradictions alive. I mean, never give... I mean, of course, everybody loves to solve problems, and everybody's happy to have no contradiction and to sleep deeply and have nice dreams. But when you really want to move things, it is very difficult to accept that you have to create contradictions which you don't like. you have to deal with that as well. Because the contradictions are anyhow there. If you don't deal with them, they take you. So that is something which is very, for me, important, and I try to find a way to do that. So, and it's very difficult because you fight against yourself in this moment of, you need a resistance against yourself. So this is, and also with the metaphors, there's this nice phrase here. Yeah. I think it is, the review, and it ends with un popolo di poeti, di artisti, di eroi. Does anybody know where it comes from?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, you do. So there's a nice contradiction, because if you read it, this is what we have at the end here,
The Carl Holmquist poem that
yeah,
actually comes from Musa.
Yeah, the Carl Holmquist poem, I mean, he used it for an invitation. Un popolo di poeti, di artisti, di eroi, di santi, di pensatori, di scienziati, di navigatori, di transmigratori. That sounds like everybody can identify with that.
Yeah, right. I can't understand.
This statement was made by Mussolini when in Ethiopia the mass killing was going on.
That's why we had the graffiti in the other room in Duces.
Yeah, so that's what I mean with contradictions.
Well, I don't know about the mass killings, but...
It was Ethiopia. It was the same time when they started to construct it, and this was made when Ethiopia was victory. It is the direct link. It's about that.
That's not my
It is,
answer,
it doesn't devaluate it that we are. So that is the point. That's the interesting point. You have to know that, and then you can identify with it. That is for me I want not to get rid of my feelings. I want not to say, oh, should not have these feelings because they can be used and misused and misguided. No, I want not to be alienated from myself, but I want to know and I use the knowledge that I can deal with that. That is the concept. What I think is something what gives me hope to deal with it. I want not to, and that is something like progression or revolution. If we use these terms, revolution is a metaphor. But if you talk about revolution in politics, it's a totally different thing than you talk about in science. As Benjamin said, revolution is the emergency brake in a train which you call progress. So it's exactly the opposite of what that you think what is design. Because there's ethics involved. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.